This is the Rookie Big Board Rookie Profile Series. I am your host, Matt Higgs, the FF Educator, here with John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar. On this episode, we are breaking down UCLA running back Zach Charbonnet. We're going to be talking about the tape. We're going to be talking about the stats. We're going to be talking about the fantasy football projections. And John, it feels so good because we have been conducting the Zach Charbonnet hype train for 3 years now, and nobody was on it, and now everybody's on it, and we're going to talk about why. Give us the background on this dynamic running back prospect.
Matt, for all of our viewers, I will admit you are the conductor. I'm just second in charge. I worked my way up to the the cabin, the engine room. It took me a little while, but over the course of this year, I am 100% on board with you. I think his ceiling is incredibly high. And yes, I see the floor, and there are some concerns. But I'm on the train. I'm in the engine room with you. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of the state of California. He was ranked number 6 overall player in the country, number 3 running back, and the number 4 player in California. He played in the 2019 Under Armour All-American game, and he finished his career with 577 carries for 4,741 yards and 62 touchdowns, Matt. The one thing I'll say about Charbonnet, high school and college, he has been a bell cow, and he has proven that he can handle a heavy workload. So he enrolls at Michigan. He goes halfway across the country, and he ends up what looked like a great opportunity with Harbaugh and the Wolverines. I was excited. And as a true freshman, Matt, he had 149 carries for 726 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's a 4.9 yards per carry average. That is very impressive, folks, for a young man. And he started 7 out of 13 games for the Wolverines. Then, there's a lot of different rumors, things that happened. As a sophomore in 2021, he only had 19 attempts for 124 yards and a touchdown. Matt, don't really know everything that happened behind closed doors. Hassan Haskins popped. That was the year he was a monster. Blake Corum began to get a heavy workload. And Charbonnet, injuries, disagreements with coaches, classroom, who knows what happened. But he didn't get the ball. He made a business decision. He transferred to UCLA, so he goes back to his home state. And choosing the Bruins over the USC Trojans or some other programs, maybe even Stanford, a little bit surprising going to a Chip Kelly offense. And I'll tell you why I was surprised. When you think of Chip Kelly, Matt, I think of speed, and more speed. And most of his backs were undersized with the Oregon Ducks. And we all loved them, but none of them had great careers in the NFL. Then you look at this monster, Charbonnet at 220 pounds and 6'1", going to Chip Kelly. And I was like, that's an interesting. Is it a square peg in a round hole? Well, Matt, he proved me wrong all along. 2021, he appeared in all 12 games and started 9. He had 203 carries for 1,137 yards and 13 touchdowns. He's selected to the first team all Pac-12 by PFF, and he ended the regular season leading all Pac-12 rushers with 7 100-yard games. And here's what I like about him, Matt. He was number 3 in the conference in all-purpose yards with 111.7. And you had talked a lot about him that year, and you loved him, and I was listening to you, and I opened my eyes, and I watched a lot of them in 2022. He decided to come back, and I'm glad he did. So the NFL experts must have given him a lower draft grade than he expected because he was flirting with coming into the NFL. Last year, he hit a grand slam, Matt. 195 carries. So he had less carries, but 1,359 yards, averaging 7 yards a pop and 14 touchdowns, Matt. He was simply amazing at times for the Bruins. Finished the regular season leading the nation in all-purpose yards. Matt, he averaged 168 yards a game for UCLA. He topped the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game, and he's only the second Bruin to rush for at least 150 yards in 3 straight games. What can I say? He was everything, all Pac-12 first team, All-American second team, semifinalist for the Doak Walker Award, Walter Camp Player of the Year Award, and averaged 7 yards per carry, Matt. Matt, I love him. It was an amazing resume he's entering the league with. What does your film study say about our man, Zach Charbonnet?
Charbonnet is an exciting combination of size and athleticism. He is a powerful and physical runner, which is really interesting, John, because you talk about the scheme, and as exciting as Zach Charbonnet's tape is, it becomes even more exciting when you do hone in and recognize that he actually was not schemed for. So if you picture Zach Charbonnet in an offense where they actually scheme for his strengths, it could be a really exciting. I know you talked about a lot of tread on the tires here, but it could be an example of somebody who's an even better pro than he is a college player. And that's a really exciting idea. He takes on defenders head on here, and he is a physical runner as well. Go back, flip on that LSU tape for 2021. You can see him run over SEC defenders, right? And I know sometimes folks, they put this Pac-12 running back in their head. This is a high 4-star running back who started off as a Big Ten running back. And if you look at his physicality, his contact balance, John, much more resembles somebody who is running in the Big Ten. So you can understand why he started there. But he balances that physicality with a real lightness on his feet. I think every time I flip on the Charbonnet tape, it surprises me every time. And how many times have I watched him here? I'm looking, well over a half dozen games on his film review here as I'm looking at his profile. But he's light on his feet, John. He can move well laterally. And I'm not, he's not a super twitchy athlete. I'm not saying that. But in a tight space, he can absolutely move laterally. He's explosive through the second level of the field. When you look at the weaknesses here, folks are going to talk about he can be a little bit slow off the line of scrimmage. He can be a little bit slow to get going. And that's what I'm alluding to with the scheming as well. But you can see once he gets to that second level, he does have explosive ability. He can be an explosive runner. He just got to kind of get to that second gear. And John, he's an underrated pass catcher. Chip Kelly doesn't ask his running backs to do that a whole ton. But when he was asked to catch the ball, he caught the ball, and he did well with the ball in his hands after the catch. He had reliable hands. So this is a mistake we make every single year, right? We don't give running backs credit because they aren't asked to catch the ball. And we tell folks every single year, don't knock them for that. And this could be a big example of Charbonnet kind of doing that as well. So I mentioned weaknesses here, can struggle to come off the line of scrimmage. He's not going to burn. All right, he's not going to burn at the combine. He doesn't have that high-end top speed. Don't double count that, right? We already know that. That's not what Charbonnet is bringing to the table. He's not Devin Achane, right? But guess what? He's 220 pounds. So he's going to play with a different physicality, and he's going to bring other traits to the table here. I love Zach Charbonnet. I've been hyping him up for years. In the film, John, the film holds up. It's consistent. It's steady growth. There's a lot of goodness and a lot of consistency. When I see consistency in running back tape, that is something I truly value here. But if we want to talk about consistency, John, we got a lot to go off of with the numbers.
Yeah, when I plugged him into my model, Matt, he was even better than I expected. And I grew to love the tape over the year, and I kept pushing him up my board. But when I plugged in the numbers, I was like, all right, I'm now all in. And you were talking about his pass catching ability. Man, I think that's the most underrated trait of Zach Charbonnet. He is not Najee Harris. He is not Devin Achane. But for a big man, he has very nice hands. And you know what I like about him, Matt? He catches and turns upfield on a dime. Like, there's not a lot of wasted motion with him. He's not looking around. He's not thinking about it. He just explodes in space upfield. 75 career receptions. Matt, in 3 seasons or 4, I mean, we had the 1 year where he had only limited use, but that's benchmark 50. He exceeds it. I love that. I was surprised when I looked 5.9 yards a carry at 2 different schools. And anyone, my friends, he has run very different schemes. To compare Michigan's scheme between the tackles within a Jim Harbaugh system compared to a Chip Kelly on the edge in space, and the young man has been productive in both and averaged 5.9, that is impressive. Context matters. 3,346 career rushing yards. Matt, this year he had 1,680 yards from scrimmage and had 28% of the Bruins scrimmage yards. I like Shaq Charbonnet. More importantly, my model does. Matt, what's your fantasy football fans know about Zach Charbonnet?
John, I have his NFL draft projection here as day 2 late 51 to 102. It wouldn't shock me if he ends up a top 50 selection. I think it's going to be really interesting draft trend overall to see after we cross over that first round marker, just how many running backs could go between picks, 31 and 50 this year. We could see a run on it, or if NFL teams are patient, maybe everybody gets pushed back. Either way, Zach Charbonnet should walk away with top 75 draft capital, I think at the worst, which is going to be a really solid draft capital for the running back position. I do his ADP right now at 201 to 204 because although momentum is certainly building on Zach Charbonnet, I don't think it's quite there yet. And I do think that there's some folks who, are just more excited about some of maybe the flashier running backs in this year's class. But John, I'm cool with it. Let him get there into the second round. I can tell you this much. He's not getting to 204 in any draft I'm in because if I don't have a pick in the early second round, I'm trading up to get him. So absolutely, great value here coming across the turn into the second round of your Superflex leagues. I have him projected as a future weekly starter. So somebody who could be a really solid running back too for your roster. You plug him into the flex spot, a more consistent presence. Maybe he's not a guy that's putting up, a week of 26 fantasy points and then, 6 fantasy points the next week, but somebody who might be able to steadily put out 13, 14, 15 fantasy points for you. I'm going to have high exposure. And, for the reason I just talked about in terms of the way that I expect him to produce, the way I expect him to carry an offense, John, I kind of see him in a similar way to where we're valuing Zeke right now. I think Zeke is, on the downside of his career, right? Where Zach Charbonnet is certainly going up in terms of youth and age. But you think about somebody here who is probably going to go off the board in a similar range in a dynasty startup. And, John, I've even heard that Zach Charbonnet is going even higher right now in startups. So it'll be really interesting to track his value. And that's certainly something we're going to be doing closely at the Rookie Big Board. If you want to keep an eye on where his ranking is, keep an eye on our discussions about his value and get in on the Rookie Big Board Discord, the rankings, the profiles. You can get access to all of that for just $3 a month. And John, the rookie guide's coming out. Over 100 pages of rookie analysis. Head on over to patreon.com/rookie big board. And as always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.